So hello everyone. It's good to have you to be together with all of you.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So we're meeting today to talk about the artistic process for the creation of the performance Don't Bite Your Tongue, the installation. I am Irina Marinescu. I've been the producer and / other things during the project. And we have with us also part of the developing art team, Alina Usurelu, the concept creator / many other roles during the project. Andrei Cincan, who took care of the graphic design and the design of the sculpture of the installation. We have Billie Rose, who has been our artistic consultant during the creation of the performance, and Jack Thomson, our colleague from the UK, who has done the choreography together with Alina for the 5 performers that did an excellent job this September at the National Museum of Contemporary Art. So hello everyone. I would like to ask, I would like to go with each of you. How do you feel, if you were to describe, this is a question that we've asked also our other colleagues, if you were to describe Don't Bite Your Tongue, like in a short sentence or like in no more than a minute to another person who has no idea about it, how would you go about it? So I'm going to ask Billie if she wants to answer first about it. Not complicated, like very off the top of your head.
Okay. So Don't Bite Your Tongue was a live performance about intimacy and sexuality.
Okay. Jack?
I would say it was a collective kind of, or a collection of experiences and kind of almost like a collective consciousness around like kind of intimacy and sexuality and how that can be explored through various different mediums, including sound, performance, and sculpture. Yeah, that's how I would describe it.
Okay. Andrei?
Okay, well, I would say it's a safe place where you can exchange informations and experiences about sexuality.
And Alina, who's the mother creator of this.
So much about this in the last like months, but yeah, for me, it Don't Bite Your Tongue feels like it's just the beginning of an exploration of sexuality, and it gathered so many people and so many thoughts and so many experiences related to sexuality that I feel now that I know much more, but I feel in the same time that I need to know much more about sexuality. And I think that Don't Bite Your Tongue tries to open up the discussion about it in a way that that try to blend this stereotype way of thinking about gender, about fantasies, about things like this.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to stay with you, Alina, to ask you, how do you feel, what has changed about Don't Bite Your Tongue, about the way you imagined it would be before you started working on it? And how did it change for you at the end of it, after you've gone through all the process, like the creative process, working with the performers, working with Billie and Jack and our other colleagues?
Well, at the beginning, the installation looked really different in my head when I started the project, when I wrote the project. I applied, and even in the beginning of the process, I had a completely different idea about the structure of the sculpture, about the I cannot say that I had something exactly in my mind related to the performance and to the choreography. Everything came with the process and in the process, and like with every call that we did, online calls, and every interview that I did or I read uh, or I listened to, it was like, oh, another one and another one, and each information that I gathered from everyone during the process, like really put put a brick on don't bite your tongue wall. And even now, like I feel like I would love to do so many changes in the performance also, but also in the way we present the installation, the structure to the public, and what kind of places do we want to present in, and everything like this. So um, I, I would say that, to conclude, I would say that uh, even when I started, I was really open to it, because I really understood in the last 2 years of my life that the process gives you the time and the information to know exactly how it would look at the end.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking about the process. What type of process do you mean?
The whole process, like the research, the photo shootings that we did during the project, the rehearsals, the workshop. I think the workshop, it was a really nice meeting point with many kind of people, and it was the point when we met also Billie, and we invited her to give us advices related to how we approach this theme of sexuality, because I felt like she had this kind of carefulness related to the topic, and she has this kind of way of understanding more sensitive sides of the process, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Billy, how did that feel for you? I mean, I remember that at the beginning of the work on the performance, after the workshop, we talked about a few things like the theme of shame, of how shame is related to sexuality, and this is something also that we wanted to cover during our artistic explorations and research. And to create a space where we get rid of this kind of aspect of attitudes and thoughts we may have in sexuality. Has the work on the performance did something for you, and did it change something in the way you approach thinking about sex, or the way you would like to work creatively?
So, sexuality is a feedback cycle. People's sexuality is changed by the media that they see,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't really talk about it openly like we talk about other things. So the way people manifest their intimacy is differently informed by the things that they see. So every project that discusses intimacy will change somebody else's intimacy. It's how it works. And then that person might do another project and change that. So being careful about these things is something very important, and being very careful about how we treat shame, because being ashamed of our bodies and being ashamed of our intimacy is the main way we interact with intimacy. That's why it can be explosive by being, or like a release because we get rid of shame, or that's why it can be minimized or hidden because we don't want to feel shame. So it was very interesting to explore other kinds of overcoming shame in the workshop, because we did it naturally. We started becoming vulnerable with each other naturally, not through like orgasmic release. Okay, we're gonna do this and we're gonna push and overcome and come and be present, or through hiding. It was more through inquisitiveness and curiosity, and that opened up something in me, and I'm very interested now in how to create an atmosphere of inquisitiveness and curiosity when talking about intimacy. And I'm very interested now in like trying to find a way to recreate it and find a way, like find out more about curiosity in intimacy.
So you would say that the final theme would be now curiosity and a different approach.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jack, would you like to tell us more about the work process? How did you work with the team, with Alina, with Billie, with Andrei, and later on with the performers? And about I don't know how Thomson after that.
Yeah, I think in some ways when I was like almost going to the airport to actually come to Romania, I was almost feeling a little bit, I wouldn't, compared to usual, I was feeling a little bit underprepared in some ways. And that kind of also left like a little bit of like, I think in hindsight, it was actually space. There was a lot of space like around what we was going to be doing. But I think before we kind of, usually before I go into like a project or something like this, I like to be kind of a little bit more kind of prepared in my own feeling. So I think it was nice to actually meet Alina, and we had a few days before we start the projects, like with the workshop, to really kind of also get to know each other's kind of energies, like in a more kind of like work way, with our discussions and stuff like this, and not over the internet, in person. And I think this really helped, like already when we started the workshop, to kind of gather a kind of strong and kind of like quite balanced relationship between like delivering certain, I guess, or pulling out certain qualities in certain performers, and kind of also like allowing space for each other to kind of do that. And then this kind of forward and back that was kind of happening quite like without without kind of, I don't know, like a direct communication. It was kind of just happening. And I thought this was actually a really nice change for me in terms of working in this way. And I think also it allowed, when we met the performers, to really meet them on that day, or in those days that we met them, and everything that they were going to bring. And the space, it felt very spacious and kind of like a really opening and an opportunity and a space for possibility, which was great. And I think one thing actually, what became more clear in more in the creation part, was actually when Billie kept mentioning about referring back to the text, because I think eventually we got so caught up in the individuals that were working and their contributions, that we was also kind of a little bit kind of not honoring this kind of amount of research that had already been done before. And I think also this dialogue between like what was in this room and what was kind of being presented by the performers and what was coming from the text became quite an important relationship, I think, in the end.
So Billie kept you in check.
Yeah, pretty much, because I think it's also we had only 5 performers, and you know they show, I say only, they show a small almost segment of the possibilities and all these different conversations around this subject. And I think it's so easy to kind of feel like so much from them as people, and then you've also got to remember that this is such a small segment of this whole scope of experience. And I think it was really good to have that prior research and that prior kind of even in some ways discussions with other people about this, to kind of open up the space, even though it felt those people were with us in some ways, listening to these kind of accounts. And that was really helpful in opening up the space even further in a quite authentic way, I would say. Or it felt like we could do it with kind of justice and kind of with a level of confidence that, yeah, okay, this is valid in like, and also kind of we pulled it into a performance validation kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which was,
You had very little time to work on. How many days were there for preparing the actual performance?
4 days, 3 workshop days. So 3 workshop days where we worked with the performers on different ideas, and then we had just 4 days to actually make the 1 hour long installation, which was, it was actually also, I think, part of that feeling that I felt coming on the airport thinking, am I prepared for this? Because I was like, this is just not going to happen. But it happened, and I think it was to do with, like I say, all those things kind of pulling together, and that kind of richness that was able to kind of all come to those few hours that the performers were working on these pieces and accounts and ideas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Alina, how did the installation, because we were talking about the sculpture and the way the installation changed in time, how did you incorporate that in the work with the performers and in the final result, I would say, in the final approach on how the public would interact with the installation, and maybe tell us a bit more about the installation itself.
Yeah, it changed a lot in the last minute, actually, and it was also like a big how do I say it? Well, it was hard because we had the installation mounted, not finally mounted, in with 2 days before we had the performance, and the performers get to interact with the installation just like 2 days, and that was like a big question for me and Jack. Okay, how do we integrate it? How do we like relate in terms of performance with it? Because we know exactly what is the purpose of the installation. We knew exactly that the people could enter in these intimate spaces and could listen to different voices that were speaking about confrontations related to sexuality, orgasm, fantasies,
nudity,
body, well, different 5 teams. There were 5 teams, like discussions in each private space were one topic, but many voices. And we knew exactly this role of the installation, but it was like a really big question of how do we integrate the performance and how do we create the relation with the installation. And we started exploring it. We tried out some things, and actually many things were like really popping up from different types of like exploration of the performers, and also some ideas related to the texture of the structure, this idea of interaction, the interaction with the headphones of the public, because also we've experimented something that we didn't thought about from the beginning, like the wind, for example, which was like a really big challenge for us in terms of the installation and the performance, because we were outside, and also not only the wind, but also this thing of, okay, the public is going to be for 1 hour with the performance, but with the performers, but we are also inviting them in these private spaces. So what it was a question, what the public will choose to do, to watch the performers or to enter in that private spaces. And we find out a way of also to make the performers interact with the headphones and take the headphones out of the installation and give them to the public, and make this kind of passing thing to listen to while watching the performance.
So also to integrate the public in the actual performance and share also the story.
And it was the other structure, which was really the main thing for it. It was like made for the performance, in which we had on one part a piece of performance that was really related to it, with the white bags in which the Kabiria and Alina were entering and exploring this idea of being with myself, being with my body and enjoying myself. And yeah, on the other side of the structure of the incognito wall, that's how we call it, and I'm gonna say why we call it like that. On the other side, it was Nono and Denisa who were playing with the camera live, so it was like this kind of playing in between.
Like a camera was filming, so that was the process. So a camera was filming, and one of the performers was holding the camera and while filming the other one, and there was a projection on this wall. What do you say it was called, incognito?
Well, I gave it this name at the beginning of the process of the like drawings and everything, because I was thinking that most of the people that I know that are watching porn are opening an incognito wall in order not like for this idea of shame, because you are ashamed because you are watching porn and you don't want someone to enter on your laptop and maybe pop up some history related to your browser or something, or maybe for the teenagers that still are watched by the parents. And but yeah, so you are opening, every time you are watching porn, you are opening this incognito wall. So it was like a sort of changing this paradigm related to it.
I think, thinking now, I think it would have been nicer if there would have been also some indications of this kind, because this was also like only between us, like the way we would refer to the structure and to the pieces of the actual installation. So it would be nice, like, to incorporate and make it like part of the performance. And now that the way it happened, it was like really short and we had a little time. I mean, it would have been nice to be able to run it again and to be actually to present it more, and I'm pretty sure it would change. Thank you for your your thoughts on this. What I would like to ask Andrei is, how would you do the installation differently? So the installation as it is now, it's an ensemble of metallic structures, I would say it's 6 of them with and in addition this incognito wall. So how would we do it differently?
Like I wouldn't change much. The only thing big change that I will make is make the video projector element like the same like the other ones, and move the projection so that it works better with the wall as it is now in the performance and so on. But apart from that, I wouldn't change much. The other thing I would change is how the individual elements, one of those 6, work alone. You know, not bunched up in one
Mm-hmm.
group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would like to improve that. They stand alone in a space. Yeah, but apart from that, no. What I would have liked to do, and this is something I discovered like working with the performers and so on, is designing the installation like at the same time with creating the performance, so to say, because I think it would have been much better for all of us, you know, to that the installation would have been made with a feedback from the performance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how did you come about with the idea for the installation? It's a structure that resembles sort of like a flower, but also like there's this feeling about it, like it's something that comes from the world of the plants somehow.
Yes, we had to have plans somehow because the whole image of the project had to have something natural in it,
Mm-hmm.
because we wanted to give this idea of natural things, of pure things. So plants were important to us, but also the human part was important. So that's why it's a mix between plants and the human body.
And which parts of the human body have you envisioned when creating it?
Well, mostly legs. Because that's like we had to create the idea was that we have to have these spaces, these intimate spaces, and they had to be supported by something.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, this creates something like a stand that looks like an arm or a leg, no matter how you do it practically. So it was only natural, you know, to go for something like legs or arms.
And to look at it from other angles as well.
Yeah.
Right. Now, a part of the performance, so the work was centered on the research that was done throughout the year. So basically, there were 4 calls around different themes around sexuality, so around fantasies, first times, awkward moments, and I'm not sure what was the other. I'm missing one of them.
How do you name your sexual body parts?
Okay, in this one. And we there was a total also of around 25, 30 interviews with people, like intimate, like anonymous, and they form also the text that Billie was referring to, that she kept drawing you back to working, well, getting lost in performative actions. And I would like to ask you how now part of the performance and the work was also like uh, and also during the actual adaptation of the stories into audio, say booklets, like for the public to listen to. Alexandros Raptis had a big contribution in this, and he made also the musical composition. How did that? And this is a question for all of you. How did that influence you, and how did you work with Alex in creating the music and in adapting it to the actual performance and the settings that it it took place in?
Well, I started to talk with Alex since the beginning of the year, and I told him from the beginning that I would love to have a atmospheric sound that is really like that is inspired by the sounds of the body or the sounds inside of the body. And yeah, it was also I felt that this process was also a little bit hurried because yeah, it was really condensed, and we finished the research phase in the beginning of September, and then we entered directly in the workshop. And I spent like more than 1 week reading the interviews and selecting the texts for the installation. And after that, I've created these themes and this idea of each
The categories.
yeah, the categories of each private space.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we had some exchanges. We after watching the first rehearsal with everything almost done, at least in concept, we realized that the sound was like too atmospheric and too long for 1 hour piece. And that's where the input of Billie came, like, okay, the text, okay, let's bring the text in. And actually we decided to take out the text from the intimate spaces also outside in the surroundings and in the
From the audio stories that were meant to be
yeah,
in the installation.
And I think that changed a lot because yeah, we realized this when actually we had this exchange in between us with the headphones and trying to get it from one to another. And it was like completely different to watch the performers while hearing all the stories, because you had like things to refer to like some things to better understand what we are trying to say with the performance, and maybe some keys to read the experiences of the performers.
And I think that created a very nice experience. I remember because it also felt, I remember from the way it was supposed to be, like this is everyone's story, not just one person. So basically each of the performers were kind of embodying these stories in a certain way, like the way things happen throughout time, and how feeling being very close or being in very tight situations, or it felt very, very intimate to be part of that space.
And
Yes.
I also think that it came at the right moment, because in when the sound came out, actually it was the moment that Jack worked with Andrei and Denisa and Nono on this tripod thing, how Billie called it.
Tripod, yeah.
Yeah, the tripod. Exploring this idea of, okay, how are the icons that present the genders, and how are we used to see this couple thing on the streets, like, but maybe Jack, you can explain better than me, but yeah.
I think, yeah, it was kind of trying to I think through that, the process of creating it, I think especially me and Alina were really connecting with a lot of this idea of the body as an image, and like the image of the body, and kind of like seeing images in the space kind of fragmented. And I was thinking a lot about, and I think this was helpful to kind of create kind of these like almost like sculptural scenarios that kind of popping up in the space. But I think we spoke a bit about kind of these, you know, these images that we see. I mean, even in like the public toilets, of kind of like this drawing of like this man, or this drawing of this woman in a certain way. And even, you know, we kind of see all these things, even like this, the two people inside outside the house holding hands with a picket fence in kind of like a silhouette. It's kind of like these images that we kind of see like throughout time or whatever in kind of different things. And I was watching like a TV program in the UK, and it was like a couple that was looking for a third person to join their relationship, to have like a polyamorous relationship. And some of the new kind of like I guess like symbols were almost appearing in kind of like how those how those three people interacted with each other to show that they were together. And like and it wasn't just three people holding hands, it was very different relationship, like when one person had around the waist, one person was holding the hand, and kind of also provoking, and especially with conversation with Billie about all these different structures of relationships and how they can be represented through like structuring of the bodies in the space. So we kind of went from this kind of ball, kind of like this muscle ball, that's what we called it, of the dancers kind of just rolling around like in this kind of like abstract whirlpool of like flesh, that they would kind of like manifest into different kind of structures and kind of images. And then they would kind of dissolve again, and it'd be like a new relationship. I think it'd be really nice if we could actually have, you know, 20 dancers, you know, doing this kind of idea. We could get so much more variation, because it was quite limited with like just having it, not limited. I think we definitely had the possibilities, but I think there was more possibilities to get out of this idea that was in some ways one was limited by just having three performers doing that section. I really think that would be really nice to have, you know, I don't know, maybe 10 people to see the different images pop up and then dissolve back and in different ways. But yeah, it was a really nice there was a nice section to connect with this sound, because it was kind of in some ways it was very abstract. It was like symbolic and kind of like space and symbolism and stuff a little bit. And I think that the sound also helped kind of just root that a little bit more in like not kind of like a two-dimensional kind of like flat kind of version of what this is, but more of that kind of like a human and kind of like a relationship or something more in there.
And so there were 5 performers. So Denisa Anastasiou, Andrei Popescu, Kabiria Morgenstern, Nono Pessoa, and Alina Lupes. Yes. How is it working with them? How did that influence you? And how did that make you rethink what you felt that it needs to be transmitted?
I don't know, Billie, do you want to say something about this?
Well, for me, I guess it was very different than from you, because I joined the project after the workshop. So my relationship to them changed after the workshop. But it was very interesting, like this change, this shift, because I still felt a lot more like a lot more of a performer than doing direction or creation. So I guess I felt very empathic to where they were in the space and answering, being very sensitive to what their needs might be. So I guess that was nice. And I think it helped having had gone through the workshop with them a lot in sort of understanding what kind of availability they might have for certain pieces and certain elements.
because it was also, I remember that during the workshop there were some provocations for
Mm.
many of the people attending. Like they felt that some of them felt that they're pushing some of their limits in a way by talking, not necessarily by doing certain physical movements, or but mostly I think it was mostly like the work was mostly mental, about being open and about maybe going talking about a subject that isn't very, although it is very present, it's somehow very hidden in our lives.
Mm.
So that was being part of the performance in a sort of invisible but present way.
Mm.
Was it as you would that experience be different for you if you have been like the actual part of the performer that would have been engaging with the public? Do you think you would have preferred more doing that, or
Mm. I'm not sure, really.
there is an aspect to your work, and maybe you can share a bit of it about us that has a public character.
So I'm a performer myself. I enjoy performing a lot, but I think I enjoyed a lot more consulting than I would have done if I would have performed, I think.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's always interesting how the different interactions and engagements with the artistic explorations and people we meet and we work with influence us on the long term, and how it changes us. How do you think it was for the now that there were some feedbacks and some discussions around the performance with the performers? How was it for you to see how they react to your proposals? How do you feel? What would you say? How was the energy between you and them? Mm, did you feel more connected? Was it chaotic? Was it um, there's always this kind of so there are some main minor breaking points during the creation process where it can feel very tense and very sometimes very frustrating in reaching that sort of consensus and how it works. Uh, and it also depends, like in most of the contemporary dance performances that I've been part of and working, there's more of a collective approach, and this is something that we did in our previous projects, like involving people and not necessarily directing them, like you do this, you do that. It's always an an exchange that comes between all of us. So I'm wondering how it was for you during the work on the performance with them.
Mm.
Definitely the performance was created by their personalities, and the in the way, like the moment we chose the people from the workshop was like choosing a sort of starting point to create the performance.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely it was like they were like their creative input was really important for us. So we worked with what what they were looking for, with what they were exploring, with um, what kind of qualities they had in terms of performing, but also we tried to understand where they need a sort of push in order, because we saw in each of them we saw potential, but the potential we saw in each of them were completely different from one to another. So from the beginning, we understood that we have 5 completely different people with us, and it was, yeah, I think we pushed them, and I think some of them released some boundaries. For example, Denisa at some point told me, after the first representation, she told me like, oh, I didn't expect it for the public to interact with me like this. This is a really interesting thing that I would like to explore more in performing. And yeah, it was a really hard and also sensitive work to do. And it was, we had the breaking points, not so many, but we had some. And I think we overcome them with trying to speak about the things that break us in that moment. And I think we gathered a common energy quite fast. Like we really managed to create this common energy and to be together.
And did you want to say something?
Yeah, I felt like there were many moments when people were getting quite stressed because there was this clock ticking effect. And I felt it was very interesting that people were going through this blend of wanting to be creative and wanting to be told what to do because of, you know, tiredness and stress and I don't want to think about things anymore. I just want to know what I'm doing and do it good, and that's it. Or this is about intimacy. I want to bring myself. I want to bring my body. I want to bring my person here and be allowed to integrate. And I felt it was quite amazing that we managed to navigate this mix successfully in the end in such a short time, because it's very easy, you know, to push someone, be creative now, and get them to be a complete blank space, and then shut them off when they try to bring themselves, and tell them what to do in the wrong time, and tell them to bring themselves in the wrong time. And that definitely happened here. There was too many people to, you know, get it right all the time. But it was nice that they did bring themselves when they were given the space to do that. And they did do what they were told when they were getting tired and couldn't just invent again.
I think one of the difficulties I think that we quite early on saw was actually the kind of beauty of a lot of the stuff that was happening was in the process of exploring the ideas. And once we kind of explored the ideas again and then again and then again, the kind of some of that that initial beauty was kind of that attractiveness of what it was that was kind of capturing our attention or kind of helping us understand further what was taking place was kind of slowly becoming less. And I think that was also, I think somehow for us and also the performers to kind of keep that genuine curiosity and genuine exploration inside this kind of framework that we kind of set for them to explore. And I think the more that they did it, I guess that's the thing, it's kind of balancing, like being doing them and bringing that kind of, you know, that personal kind of exploration, but also really sticking to that kind of structure that we kind of set. And I think that balance between that kind of like like rigidity and kind of like this is what's going to happen versus this like unexpected and kind of like the beauty and the kind of this thing happened and the beauty of a live performance, but knowing that it was still like kind of structured in some way. I think that was quite interesting to see how different performers navigated this particular thing. Yeah, and I think like you were saying a little bit, I think both Alina and Billie, like this like kind of like wanting them to bring themselves, but also at the same time knowing that sometimes it's not always appropriate to bring this total kind of liberated kind of like sense of who I am. It's like not so appropriate in certain moments. You're going to pull so much attention from something completely different, and the space has to be kind of considered in such a sensitive way by the performers, interact with each other, with the public, and also the installation and sound. So yeah.
I'm thinking now, talking about everything that happened. For me, in the interviews and stories, there was one section about, and one of the questions about nudity and how people felt about it. And it comes off during, I myself, I believe in performances, it should have a certain role, and it shouldn't be just for the role of shocking or to do, but we are used more in talking about nudity, but mostly from one of the interviews, there was this story of how someone went to a nudist beach for the first time, and then repeating and feeling very free about it, and understanding that nudity isn't necessarily about sexuality. And that conception, that perception first came also because mostly like nudity is represented and we have access to nudity mostly when we see sexuality. So whether we're talking about pornography or about some romantic licenses, or like the spaces where we can visualize nudity mostly are in relation to sexuality. So that was very something that was very that stuck with me, like having the freedom of seeing all kinds of bodies, different expressions, not very like very groomed and very top magazine, the cover of a magazine bodies, and having this freedom of embracing everything that we see. And I remember from the performance, and with that, we're just going to prepare to wrap this up, to wrap the discussion up. I remember the very intimate feeling that I was left with as the performers were taking off some of the clothes and putting on some other clothes, and this way, and it was freezing, so we managed to catch, like, for the representations there were one was very windy, and the other night was very cold, so it was they did splendidly with and it was this feeling also like the public stuck with them, like it was this kind of solidarity with watching them and being present, like really being present. So I'm left with this impression and with this feeling of intimate sharing, dressing, undressing, showing, but not really showing the body and the relations that are created. So I would like to ask each of you, what was, like, in a very short sentence description, which image stuck with you from the performance, and if you were to tell it to someone else, one of the images that you were fond of. And I'll leave you in whichever order you feel like remembering. No pressure.
I have two. The first one is the moment when Kabiria entered with the head inside of the installation and with the legs up, and it was like completing a sort of the structure.
She was upside down, like with the legs up.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a really strong image. And also, well, the moment with the camera behind the wall, it was created in a certain way, but in the first performance we had a problem with the projector and we couldn't use the projector, so we changed the whole situation into bringing the working with the camera in front of the public directly. And I think that beauty of Denisa and Nono collecting people around them and talking to them and making them interact with the camera and making them like give some inputs related to how they compose with the camera or how they do what they do in front of the camera was like really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
For me, I think like the image that stuck with me is also with the incognito war. Like it was that moment when Denisa and Nono, they were doing their thing behind the wall, and that was and what they were doing was showing them then on the other side on the wall through the video projection, and Kabiria
Alina.
and Alina was on the other side of the wall, interacting with the projection of what they were doing
Mm-hmm.
through the wall. So it was for me. I saw what she was doing as the struggle of the person who is trying to get to intimacy through the incognito wall of things. You know, like without showing. Well, I mean, by being alone and not showing your identity to the others, but trying to experience what the others are. I think that was really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That's a message.
I think the image I really loved was the duet that was a little bit touching on this idea of consent a little bit between Don Japo and Kabiria. And I really enjoyed the kind of tension in this duet. I thought it was very beautiful, but I do also wish it could also be with more people and more variant types of people, because I think it was such a beautiful image, but I think it almost just captured one essence of kind of this relationship or this dynamic. And I feel like it could be done with more people, different types of people, and create an even stronger image. So I think the image was really lasting, but I saw so much more potential in what that could be if it was kind of also again with that idea of like scale and kind of representation a bit more, like really opening that up much more to kind of get a different a richer sense of the image. The image just becomes deeper informed in some ways by having just more variant.
So more bodies, more performers.
Yeah, I think so.
For me, actually, the image that stuck with me the most was an image outside of the performance when a security guard had entered the space, almost entering the space, sitting in the door, and his body occupying the whole frame of the door, being very tense in his body and being sort of confused in his body on what is going on, and deciphering, like a true outsider coming in and deciphering this performance, this installation. And it spoke to me so much, because what we think intimacy is a very different thing from what intimacy actually is. If, you know, aliens would look at the human race and actually observe intimacy from some high kind of, you know, spaceship or magic. And intimacy, like what we think intimacy is like this domain of strictly young people, strictly cis heterosexual people have intimacy like nobody else does, and they're all beautiful and they're all whatever, and they look very mushy and blah, Hollywood. because of the representations, because of the so many representations depicting intimacy like that. And if you want to change what intimacy is, you have to represent other facets of it. And this beautiful depiction of how this was unrecognizable to this outsider who didn't read anything or didn't know what was going on, because intimacy does not collectively look like what we were doing yet. And him understanding just by like his body showing me that he is slowly understanding what's going on just by looking for the few seconds he was there, and just, oh, okay, and it was fine, and he left, which was so moving to me, because I felt like he did understand what he was watching eventually, like in a few minutes. And like, yes, that means it's good. It means, you know, it's progress.
That's beautiful.
Do this.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you very much for sharing your time and your thoughts with me and with all of us. We're going to now think about more about what sexuality and intimacy is, and we'll hopefully be able to launch next year to work on the future extension of Don't Bite Your Tongue, which is an artistic film. So meanwhile, we'll keep in touch on our social media and website and everyday messages. So have a warm and non-threatening and healthy autumn. And see you soon.
See you later. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.